If you with it, drop it.
Hey, guess what? I am so excited about today's interview. This is such a powerful, beautiful, amazing therapist. Her name is Rachel, and she's going to join us today. And we're going to be talking about a bunch of different good stuff, juicy topics, but we're going to be talking about therapy. We're also going to be talking about some of the background. She has a background in art therapy as well as really being culturally competent and aware. And so we're going to get into some juicy conversation. Let's talk about well, first of all, let me allow everyone to get to know you. You tell the world who you are and introduce yourself to the world.
Okay. Hi, my name is Rachael Bolaños Jackson. I am a therapist in the Des Moines area. Nicole did a great job like introducing me, but I do have some background in like art and creative therapies. I love somatic therapies. We can go into that deeper, but also just I think that we need therapists. We need a little FUBU. We need Black therapists for Black people. We need people to be around that understand our experiences and lived experiences. And so I'm a huge advocate for people of color going into therapy, and that we can have therapy and Christ at the same time, that they are friends. They are friends. And so having more people understand that is one of my goals.
Awesome.
Is that good? Okay.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, so let's talk about my person is really in a transition, right? And I can relate to this because I'm in some huge transitions myself. And so, moving from another city or transitioning into a new career, or at this age, then they may have had children that are graduating. So they're empty nesters. They are getting to a place in their career where they have enough background where they've laid the foundation for skill set and now they're in a leadership role. And so maybe they're going from doing one-on-ones or working with a small team to being on stages, right? So in transition, there is so much identity renegotiating. There's so much emotional turmoil, right? Of how to show up in this season of our lives. So I really want to break this down and just dig into it. But what would be your advice or your insight to someone that's in a transition and is really, because when I talk about renegotiating identity, I think people are kind of like, do we do that? And I'm like, I think we do, but I want you to tell us how that happens when we move from
Right.
season to season.
Yeah. And it's so normal.
Okay.
And like we do this sometimes very flawlessly. Other times it's not. It's a really stop moment for us, right? I think you talked about like kind of the empty nester, right? The I've been a mom my whole life and now all of a sudden my kids are grown and they're kind of doing their own thing and like what am I? Who am I? And so because we oftentimes see our worth based off of what we can provide for others, right? And we live in a system that kind of promotes that, right? Like you are only valuable if you're feeding into something, you're giving something, right? And we can acknowledge that, like, we're just valuable as humans, but as beings, as souls, as gifts to the earth, right? And when one of those things shifts or changes, then our being is left kind of in this stagnant place of like, who am I? What am I? What am I providing to the people around me? And there are two things that come to mind for me. One is that it's very normal to grieve that loss. And
Mhm.
that when we think of grief, I don't think that we think about it expansive or like wide enough even. Like I think when we talk about grief, we think about losing someone, but we can also lose an idea. We can lose a place. We can lose a role. We can lose, and all of those things create grief. And we have to manage those feelings of sadness and frustration and anger and transition and then acceptance, right? And we go through all those feelings. And then the second thing is also to remind yourself that there are transferable skills that like you don't start brand new, right? Like you take these skills that you had in this past life, in this past job, in this past role, and you bring them to a new space, and you're not starting fresh. Like you're taking those and you may be adapting them, you may be shifting them, but they're not going away. And so I think about this, like back to the analogy of like maybe a mom whose kids have left and now they have new roles. It's like, okay, but you know how to manage a schedule, you know how to manage a house, you know how to you know how to show up for your kids and support. Like those are all skills. And like those will transfer wherever you see yourself in your next journey, but just allow yourself to feel the feelings as you move that way.
You know, I think it's very eye-opening because, and I think I've told you offline, is that like moving from a lifestyle or moving from a career or moving from a city even, I didn't associate grief at all with transition, really. I mean, like you said, I think the most common way is life transition. So if you lose someone, then I think of grief. I didn't think of grief or that I had to work through grief when I was letting go of an idea of myself or letting go of a career move, or now I'm in a different role and I've changed careers and I'm pursuing something different. So let's talk through kind of maybe if a person is like me. I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but like, what are the ways that grief can come in that are not death related? Like, tell us more about grief and like how that can happen and how we can deal with it.
Yeah. So, okay. There's like the basic science, like psychology of like grief processing, right? And you have like the 7 stages of grief. And like
Right.
it used to be kind of taught from like a really Western is like you hit every single milestone and then, oh, well, it's done. And like, that's not how it works. You can kind of bounce around. You may find yourself being more accepting of the change and shift, and then back down to denial, like, oh, this can't be happening. Back up to bargaining. You know what? Like, I'm gonna pray it's gonna be fine. It's not gonna really happen, right? And back to okay, I accept it. I'm fine, right? We can bounce around the different levels of grief, but inevitably, usually we come to a place of acceptance. I think what's interesting, and I want to hit on, is like why when there's transition we have grief,
Mhm.
because our brain is a pattern seeking machine. Our brain loves comfortability.
Mhm.
Our brain loves things that it can recognize because recognition keeps us safe. If I
Mhm.
know what to expect, I know how to operate. And so when I'm in a space that feels safe, even if it's chaotic, even if it's wild, but it feels familiar, I feel safe. And so why change and adaptation feels so tough is because you're really taking your brain and being like, we're going to experience something we've never experienced before, right? And your brain's like, oh, I don't know about any of that, right? And now I got my guard up, right? Because is this going to be safe for us? Am I going to feel comfortable here? And this can be in a new job, a new role, a new city. Like, am I going to be welcomed? Am I going to be heard? Is this a place that I'm going to feel safe? And our brain has to work through those things. And as things feel more familiar, you feel more confident, you feel more self-esteem in yourself. But
Mhm.
that transition is why we also have fear and guilt and sometimes shame even.
So when you think about therapy, what are some of the barriers that you think hold people back from actually seeking support in situations like this? Because you're saying that it's normal, but we are like,
Yeah.
hold on, it's not normal for me. And so what are some of those barriers that you see and how can we speak to those?
This is one of my favorite topics.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
okay. So first, I'm going to come from because this is the lens in which I operate and the lens in which I do a lot of my therapy, right? So Black women in general have been praised for centuries for their resiliency, right? And we can all look back on Black women, strong Black women. We were raised by them. We saw them. They have moved our community. They have moved every social movement. And it benefited white supremacy, right? Because when the slave trade was going through, it benefited to be, well, Black people are stronger, they're more resilient, they don't feel pain like white folk feel pain. And this has continued and continued and continued. Right. And so the communities sometimes, especially communities of color, are like, I'm resilient. And that is a beautiful thing. But resiliency becomes a hindrance when we don't accept help, support, We are not kind to ourselves. We lack compassion for our community. We hold ourselves to unrealistic expectations, and then we hold our brother and our sisters to unrealistic expectations. Then it becomes unhelpful, right? And so then so many people get to this place of like, I don't ask for help. I can do it. I can carry it on my back. I saw my mama carry it on her back. I saw my grandmother carry it on her back, and they did it with a smile on their face. And unfortunately, what happens is so many generations are lost to this like deep and seated sorrow. And so a lot of folks, I think, that are coming to therapy now are talking about that sorrow, are bringing that up. And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about generational stuff. I think that's one hindrance. I think it's a social, consistent social hindrance that like, and also I'll be straight, right? Like psychotherapy has been a white Western medicine field. It has not always done right by people of color. It is oftentimes taught from like a very European standard. It doesn't allow for like community or sometimes for faith, sometimes for whether your faith is more spiritual or whatever. It doesn't allow for that kind of collaboration.
Okay, so let's talk about, okay, so you kind of brought up the cultural aspect, but let's also talk about maybe some of the faith barriers, right, that are connected to culture that stop us. And that may not even be a people of color thing. That might just be you have faith. Why are you going to supplement your faith with something else kind of thing? So again, like I said, the biggest thing, and not that I am on here saying everybody needs to call Rachel, even though everybody really needs to call her. Not that I'm saying that. I'm really wanting to advocate for in transitions, which we're consistently going through transitions, especially if we're ambitious or we're growth oriented, then we're going through transitions and there are emotional things that come through transition. So my biggest thing is tools. How can we introduce tools that can support? And I think therapy is a tool that can support amongst other tools, like faith is a tool, or wellness or modalities are tools, right? So when I think about that, then it's like, how can we use this to take us to the next level and help us to transition and show up more powerfully in our lives? So tell us how maybe faith could be blocking this tool from being being effective.
Yes. Okay. So I love that analogy. I will be stealing it. Just want you to know.
You got
right. I will be
I
adding
steal
that.
all types of stuff from you, and I
right. So I will be borrowing. I don't know. Is that more PC proper? So there's a couple things. I love the idea of thinking of it as a tool. I also, you articulated so well this idea of like transition, and I really wish that I follow me a little bit. It's gonna feel like I'm gonna go off schedule or off script, but I wish people would understand that your mental health and your physical health are so connected. And that our body and our brain and all of these things are wildly connected. That your brain is a like superputer organization, like organ in your brain, and it controls every part of your body, your nervous system, your gut health, all of these things. And like I see so many people be so cautious and thoughtful. And I think those are both beautiful when it comes to their physical health, right? Like I see people be like, I'm gonna go to my checkup. I'm gonna make sure I get this done. I'm gonna do all these things. But then when it comes to our mental health, it's like, I don't need that. Right. And it's like, oh, but they're connected. Like, and I think that like if we thought about mental health and we thought about it the same way we thought about physical health, it's like, okay, you go and sprain your ankle. Okay. This is like a transition, right? You have an injury or a minor thing that will heal over time. It's small, right? But if you ignore it, you don't get help for it, it could grow into something much larger, right? So like, why not go get the splint? Why not go to your doctor and make sure it's not more than like a rolled ankle? Why not go and like, make sure you're walking and limping on it so that you're not adding more stress, right? That's a transition in life. So I'm going through a little bit of a tough time right now with this transition. Go see a therapist. It doesn't have to be forever. I think people have thought that therapy is like, well, I'm going to be there every day for 100 years. And we're going to talk about my mama and everyone's going to be mad. And I don't have any problems. And it's like, no. We don't have to do that, right? Like there are different types of therapy. there are short intermediate therapies of like, hey, I'm just going through this transition and I need some support, some extra support. And you may start there and then realize, wow, actually I want to grow. But that isn't always the case. Some people just come and they just need it for that transition. All that to say is I think that like utilizing therapy in the way that you would utilize like a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you need support, if you just need to check in, like why not just do it, right? Why not just go for 3 to 4 sessions and see if it helps? And I'm going to talk about why it is so important. It is so important to get a good therapist and one that you connect with. So the psycho information about it, right? Like the research finds out that like there are a lot of modalities of therapy.
Right.
All of them are relatively good, right? They are successful, okay, for the most part. What is the largest indicator that you're going to find therapeutic success comes from the relationship you build with your therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Is it somebody you can talk with? Is it someone that you feel heard by? Is it someone that you feel is doing the work to understand you and understand where you're coming from? Are they challenging you? Are they asking you to think more in depthly? All of those things. That is where you find success. So it is so important to find someone who you feel like is going to A, be specialized in what you're looking for, like you said, and B, someone that you feel like you can connect with. So my suggestion, whenever I take on a new client, there are 2 things that I do always. First is I always do a consultation call, which means that I won't see anybody until you've called me or had like a 15 to 20-minute conversation with me. I introduce myself, you introduce yourself. We're going to have a quick conversation. And then I always ask that person to wait 24 hours. 2, I recommend that they call multiple people. So
Mm-hmm.
talk to me, call somebody over there, and make sure that you find somebody and ask them questions. Ask them questions too. And don't be afraid to search.
Yeah.
Okay. That's my last thought.
Okay, got it. How do we find your fabulous self? If someone wants to follow you or work with you, then where's the best place to find you?
So I have a website and it's creatively restorative. So www.creativelyrestorative.com. You can get on there and see some of the things I offer. Obviously, I do like individual therapy, group therapy, art therapeutic interventions, and things of that nature. I also do like DEI type stuff, and I know that's a very mm, uh, you know, not supposed to be saying all that, but so I do some leadership and personal development type stuff using the IDI continuum, which is the intercultural inventory. So I do some of that, coaching and leadership, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for just taking the time to be with me today.
Yeah.
Don't take it for granted for sure. I think that the listeners will gain from our great short little interview because you're just so insightful and I just really appreciate you for sure. So thank you for being here with me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This has been really wonderful.